Hello, this is Level 2 Reformed English Functional Skills reading paper, focusing on questions 7, 10, and 14, Lesson 1. If you think reading is boring, you're doing it wrong. So this lesson is based on this particular paper, which is PENAR 2. We're going to start with questions 7, 10, and 14 because they're related questions. And this is to look at how writers influence readers by using text features. Now, there are two types of text features: presentational features and language features. They are also called layout features or literary features, and they can also have other names, but try to keep in mind what they stand for. What do presentational features do? They present, it's the layout. And what do language features do and literary features? They tell you something more in depth about the language, if you think about poetry. So we'll look at all of those. First of all, when you see this, do you think these are presentational features or language features? And there's the answer. Yeah, so you can see you've got the headline. It's a magazine article. They're telling you there. There's a column, there are paragraphs, and there's an image. And these are the things that tell us that they are presentational features. Now, there are many, many more, but let's say these are the basic ones. Subheadings, for example, as well. Then, do you see the difference here? So what are these ones? You've got the rule of three, direct approach, which is also called direct address. You've got hyperbole, exaggerations. You've got onomatopoeia. You've got idiom, colloquial expressions, rhetorical questions, and imperative or commands, right? So what do you think these are? These are the language features, okay? So question 7 will ask you about organizational features. So that's the layout features, yeah? Organizational features, layout features, presentational features, they're all the same thing. Question 7 will ask you to locate this information in the text. So it's going to be things like what we've seen before, plus bullet points and numbered lists, captions, speech bubbles, web page menus, or the tabs, right? Tables, grids, footnotes. There are some others, but let's, to name a few, right? And here's an example of a footnote, because we found that a lot of people didn't know what a footnote is, okay? So there's an example of a footnote. So it's that little number in the text, yeah? And then the information is written at the bottom. So it's additional information that could be added to that sentence, but it makes the sentence a little bit clunky or too long, or it's information that you don't really need to read at that point. But if you want to know more, you go to that, from that number to the bottom of the page, and you find it there. Footnotes are really important in academic writing. So for those of you who want to go ahead and study at university, it's very good to learn how to use footnotes, but for a start, what they are, and then eventually how to use them. So here's an example of what question 7 will look like. Question 7 will always, every question in the reading paper will always look exactly the same, right? Exactly the same. They will always be every question will always be structured in the same way, but obviously will refer to different texts, okay? So according to text B, so there's text B, how long must a delay be before compensation is payable? Okay, so you need to just go and look for that information in the text. This is all text B on both pages because I couldn't fit it in. But then they ask which organizational feature, now remember that's a layout feature or presentational feature, is used to present this information. Okay, so what you can do is pause for a second and try to find the answer before you move on to see the answer on the screen. Okay, so give yourself 5 minutes to do this question and then move on. So there's the answer. The information is there in the grid. Which organizational feature is used to present this information? 7B, the grid, the table, the chart. And then the information is sitting right there. Okay, so that's question 7 done. Now, questions 10 and 14 are about language features, and they are things like facts and statistics, authority or experts' opinions, vivid language, exaggeration, emotion, exaggeration, hyperbole, building a relationship with the reader, which is called direct address, right? So, can you remember what else language features might be called? Literary features, okay? So let's look at these a little bit more. So here are examples of facts and statistics of how you will see it in the text, right? 2.8 million people, blah, blah, blah. Samsung Galaxy's camera includes the option of 3G or 4G data, so fact, yeah. And then authority or experts' opinions. They will look something like this, like there will be a person and they will be quoted as saying something. So they will be an expert or an authority in something, and you will see a quote. So it's very easy to look out for the facts and statistics because you see the numbers, and for the authority or experts' opinions, very easy to find them because you've got the direct quotation to look out for. Then you can also talk about emotion or exaggeration. Examples here: ripped off, second-class citizen, shocking, alarming, new and improved, sparkling and sensational. You can hear how this sort of language is used very much in advertising, you know, new and improved vacuum cleaner, sparkling and sensational cleaning product, disinfectant, whatever. And in the news as well, yeah, ripped off, second-class citizen, shocking, alarming. Those are the kind of words that you will hear in the news being used in the news, in the media a lot. Then we've got this one, we want you. Yes, so building a relationship with the reader by using direct address. And here are examples. Are you satisfied with your phone provider? Wouldn't it be great if supermarkets gave you more value for money, right? So here we have hyperbole, an intentional and extreme exaggeration for emphasis or effect. So there's an example, this book weighs a ton. And then there's that little guy saying, I will literally die if you don't stop using hyperboles. Then, so this is always my most basic and favorite way to explain the difference between simile and a metaphor. Right, so the moon is cheese and the moon is like cheese, okay? Which one is a simile and which one is a metaphor? Okay, so the thing is, if there's like or as in the expression, it's a simile. And if there's none of that, it's a metaphor. So the moon is cheese. It's stronger than the moon is like cheese, right? And that's what makes it a metaphor. I know this is a very silly example, but this is an easy way to remember. So here we have the metaphor guy, and the simile guy. You're a weasel. Well, I'm like one, because the simile always needs like or as. Okay? And there's an explanation, a comparison of two things that are essentially different using the words like or as. That's a simile, right? And there's a little bit of poetry there. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose. Okay. Now, a metaphor on the other side is the subtle comparison. Okay. And here's an example. This is so beautiful. She calls me tofu because I'm so soft. I wish I were tough and full of fire like ginger, like her. And there's the Shakespeare as well. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Okay, that's the metaphor. And then idioms. So idioms, you probably use a lot of idioms naturally and you're not even aware of them. So yeah, that's what it says there, in everyday language. So here's an example with a lot of idioms in the example. Hold your horses, just hold your horses if you think idioms are hard. I'm here to let the cat out of the bag. Idioms are a dime a dozen, and learning them is a piece of cake. So you should be able to get the meaning of the idiom from the context of the sentence, but otherwise just look them up. Another language feature you may come across is repetition. Now, here's an example. It's how they use, I mean, it really goes without saying what repetition is, but it's how you use repetition, for example, in a song or in a poem. Like you see there, if you have to dry the dishes, if you have to dry the dishes, if you have to dry the dishes. So if you see any form of repetition in the text, you could use that as a literary feature to point out. And another obvious one that we can't forget is Brexit is Brexit. Then you can also find alliteration in the texts that you have to look at and answer questions about. And there are examples of alliteration. So in popular culture, Tiny Tim, Mickey Mouse, Coca-Cola, and in poetry, of course, like this poem, While I Nodded Nearly Napping. Yeah. Another literary feature is, of course, the rule of three. Three is the magic number. So you will see in advertising, I mean, if you look there, it's in prevention. It's used by, see it, say it, sorted. You will remember it's used by TfL, maybe National Rail as well. And then hands, face, space. You are very familiar with that at the moment, and that's obviously in the COVID prevention campaign from the government side. And you know, in the podium when they give those speeches, there are always three things there, three words, and they've changed throughout the last year. So it's because three things, as they say there, things that come in threes are funnier, more satisfying, or more effective. So it's easier to remember. And then there are some other examples there as well. So here is question 10. Yeah, so you have the text and it says, identify two language features used to inform readers about transport developments, right? So you're going to look for the language feature in this text and then give an example. Look for the language feature and an example. Now, it might be one of the ones that we mentioned before, and it might be something else, but make sure that you focus on language features to inform readers about transport development, not just any language feature. So again, what you can do now is pause the slide for 10 minutes, maximum 10 minutes, and then check your answer on the next slide. And there you go. So you can use all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 9 examples, right? Any of these, and it can also be something else, but they say they do not accept layout features. So remember, layout features are the presentational features. So if you put them down in your answer, no marks. Because question 10 and 14 are specifically about the language features, question 7 about the presentational features. So there are all the examples, and all you have to do is write the language feature and then quote the example. And it can be just as short as that, like big push, you see there, for metaphor, alliteration, pilot projects. Yeah, so any of those. And if it's something else, I guess you'll just have to ask your teacher if that one would also be acceptable. So here's question 14. It's multiple choice. So you just have to look at this text is text A, and text B is the one much earlier in the presentation, and look at which one applies to both of them. Questions, direct address, humor, or exclamation. Now, don't spend too long on reading through text A if this is the first time you see text A, because look, it's only 1 mark. Pause again and give yourself only 5 minutes to find the answer, and then you can play again. And there's the answer. Now this has brought us to the end of the lesson, and so now you just have to check, do you know at this stage what literary features are, or language features, because they're the same thing, remember? And do you know what presentational features are, layout features? Do you know the difference? And do you know how to spot them in a text? And if you know all of that, then you've learned quite a lot today. That's covering questions 7, 10, and 14 in the paper.